Next up, we have a lady who I've had the privilege yesterday of welcoming as our newest member, one of our newest directors to the Entrepreneurial Scotland Board. She's Executive Vice President of one of the most exciting companies in the world today, I would say, not just in Scotland, and an absolute powerhouse in that. So we were really honoured that in the midst of that, in the midst of a very, very busy time for the business, she agreed to come on our board. The CEO and Lesley's husband of FanDuel, Nigel, recently spoke for us at Dynamic Earth alongside Gareth Williams of Skyscanner to a packed house, and it was an electric night where people really appreciated that we have two absolute powerhouses of the technology world created in recent years in Scotland. There's no truth to the rumour that we made a mistake and thought we'd booked Skyscanner for the conference today and set the stage up accordingly. Absolutely no truth to that rumour whatsoever. But it's an amazing time for the business, as you'll hear in this interview. I mean, this is a real privilege to get Lesley to come here at this point and talk to us about her journey and the amazing journey of FanDuel. Lesley Eccles.
Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, these are fully functioning, the recliners.
Oh, great. Make myself comfortable.
I actually don't remember the real ones ever reclining this far. That's good. Lesley, fantastic to see you here today. I mean, FanDuel, I always assume, because I'm such a big, pardon the pun, fan of the business, and I've been following you since the very, very start, that everyone knows, but maybe it's probably not a fair assumption for the audience. Maybe some people haven't heard of you, amazingly. Could you give us a kind of 2-minute, this is what the business is, and then we can talk about how you got here?
Okay. That's always a hard question. We set about transforming the way Americans consume sports. It's all about making sports more exciting. So what it actually is, it's a game, web and mobile. Sorry, I'm putting on my American accent here.
You're
mobile.
You're genuinely mid-Atlantic.
I feel like I am. So the game is essentially you pay an entry fee, you pick a team of football players, and to use an analogy from the UK, it might be a goalkeeper from Arsenal, a defender from Man United, and that's your team, and you pitch that team up against other people's fantasy teams, and everyone's paid an entry fee, we take commission off the top, and then the rest is paid out in prizes. That's how it works. The innovation is that instead of it running over the entire football season or baseball or whatever the sport is, it only lasts a day or a week. And that was what we built the business on back in 2009.
So daily fantasy sports.
Fantasy
that's
sports.
Cool, nice, simple, easy to understand. So let's go back a bit. You and Nigel were relocated from down south back to Scotland.
Yeah, we were in London.
Why did you decide to do that in the first instance?
We'd been in London about 10 years, and we were both management consultants. And that meant travelling a lot, being away from home a lot. We'd started a family in London, and as soon as we looked at schools, we were thinking, all right, time to move back to Scotland. And randomly, a job came up. I was still on maternity leave, but randomly a job came up in Edinburgh for Nigel. And we thought, right, let's just go. And, never regretted it. Loved every minute of being back.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. And then again, so you've got, and I mean, I have to say, for both of you, I mean, huge respect, because most of us, there's one entrepreneur in the family, and there's always a safety net. I mean, Heather was a lawyer. She always reminds me that kind of, first mortgage she covered while I went out and played games for a while.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, not a difficult decision because, you had that a bit of balance with that. But for you guys, it's kind of, you know, it's all, pardon the gambling analogy, but all in.
Yeah, very much so.
So you've got Nigel with a career, you know, building in effectively new media in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
What made the decision that actually we're going to jump in with both feet and go for something ourselves?
Yeah, well, over the years we'd always kind of talked about doing something ourselves. And once we'd moved up here after about 6 months, we'd had baby number 2, and we thought, you know, I want to get back into a challenging role. I don't want to go back into management consulting. I want something that's flexible. He wasn't particularly enjoying what he was doing, and he says, "Why don't we start something on our own?" I thought, whoa, hang on. You know, we'd just taken on a huge mortgage, newborn baby. This is not a good time, and I don't take risks, she says. So we talked about it for like 2 days, and then I was like, do you know what? If we don't do this now, we're never going to do it, and we'll always regret it. And I didn't want, in 20 years' time, to be looking back. I always have this thing of, when I'm on my deathbed, what am I going to regret? And that was a point where I thought, if I don't do this now, I will regret that. So we were mental at the time. I mean, I look back and think, we knew nothing. What were we thinking? But we took the jump, and I'm glad we did.
So I remember the company, because two of your early investors, Ian Ritchie and Kevin Dorn, are really close friends of mine. And I remember them telling me about HubDub.
Yes.
You know, so this is really interesting, because we're going to talk about a pretty big pivot here.
Yes.
Tell us what the business was when you started it.
Yeah, so our first idea was a prediction market, which we launched in 2008. And it was a fun game. It was a free-to-play game. And it was based around, I have to say, a fairly tenuous revenue model around advertising and research and whatever. But
did you use the word tenuous in your pitch to investors?
No, we didn't. But you know, the thing was, we had a really strong founding team. There were 5 of us. It wasn't just the 2 of us, and we all had our own individual areas of expertise.
And the other 3 came from where?
Well, we met them in the pub. They had their own startup at the time, and we kind of joined together.
And these were Edinburgh informatics guys?
Yes. Yeah, well, they were in the university. They had been school friends, and then they'd gone on to do a postgraduate degree at the university.
Cool.
And they actually knew Kevin, so that was where our connection with Kevin came in. But because there were 5 of us, we had a really strong founding team, and we were able to use that to get some investment in the early days. And it was actually Pentech in Edinburgh and Scottish Co-Investment Fund who believed in the team and our passion for building something. And actually the day that we pitched them in 2008 was the day Lehman Brothers went bust. So those were pretty dark days. And shortly after that, I think 4 months after that or so, we realised this is just not going to work. And we'd been at it a year. It was long enough. We had to just say, let's be brave and be bold and just come up with something else. And at that point, we looked at the product that we had, and one of the components of that prediction market was around predicting the results of sports games. And from the very start, even with HubDub, we focused it on the US market. We launched it in the US. We didn't launch it in the UK. And we looked at it and thought, well, this is where all the action is in this game. Can we do something in sports? Because they're obviously hugely passionate about this area, which has a different business model. And that was at the point we came up with the idea behind FanDuel.
Brilliant. So you then, I think quite brilliantly again, and I know, Nigel had some background with 888, wasn't it? Betfair, sorry,
yes.
in the online gaming market.
Yes.
So understood regulations, started to look at what the Americans were saying, because
yes.
That's a time, as we were, I think, talking about last night, when people were getting locked up for running poker sites
Yes.
in Europe that just happened to have some customer in America get off a plane, next thing you're slammed up and...
So we were very aware of that, and from the outset, we spent a lot on lawyers because we wanted to be really sure. We from the beginning, our approach was we should be conservative with certain things, and make sure that we do the right thing. So there's in the States there's federal law and state law. And at a federal level, there's a law called UEJA, which is the Unlawful Internet Gaming Enforcement Act.
As opposed to a board that you try and predict the future.
Yes, we do. And that came into effect in 2006. And within that law, there was a special safe harbour for fantasy sports. So we thought, okay, this is interesting. We know that people are passionate about playing sports in our existing game. We know there's a safe harbour for fantasy sports. This number will blow your mind. 32 million people play fantasy football in the States. We're like, okay, let's look into this. And, it was an area where there hadn't really been any innovation. There were the big players. There was ESPN, Yahoo, CBS. But other than bringing the kind of spreadsheets and fax machine-based play online, nothing much had progressed beyond that. People were still playing it the season-long way, which had been around for years.
So you, I don't think there's any way to put this other than this, and you guys are sometimes quite modest about this, but you defined and built this market. This was FanDuel invented daily fantasy sports. Just give us an idea how much money is transacted on daily fantasy sports today in the US.
So last year we paid out over $1 billion in prizes. So that's the money that's going through.
That's just you guys.
That's just us.
Yeah, and you've got one other competitor.
Yeah.
I'm not quite as good or as big as you, but so it's the billions.
Yeah.
So this is a multi-billion-dollar market.
Yes.
Created from that one. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I think people often, partly because you're on a doorstep as well. Oh yeah, that's good. They're doing. Oh, isn't it nice? They're doing really well. No, you've defined.
You talk about a disruptive industry or a disruptive business. You mentioned Uber and Airbnb earlier on. They've done it, and that's exactly the same as what we're doing. The only difference I would say is that often when you're disrupting an existing industry, there are losers. Yep. So Uber is big taxis. But with us, really, everybody's kind of a winner. The sports leagues love it, customers love it, TV networks love it. So there's not really a loser in our industry, which is.
So good ideas are good ideas, and the world is littered with people who had good ideas and then somebody else executed. I mean, I was talking yesterday about amazing thing that came out of Dundee. Dundee's now got we're both born in Dundee, although Lesley's family moved to Forfar, which we don't like to talk about too much. But we've now got a little sort of stars in the waterfront thing, Discovery Walk it's called, and one of the stars, and Paddy and I, with 4J Studios, we sponsored it. It's a guy called Walter Spear and a guy called Peter Lacomber who invented amorphous silicon. Amorphous silicon. Without amorphous silicon, there'd be no LCD televisions, there'd be no solar panels, and they had zero revenue. Came back to Scotland for that because it was a naive time in the 70s. They threw the research up there and let the Japanese effectively take it on. So those stories are this one isn't. This is so you had SEP and Scottish Investment Bank through Scottish Co-Investment Fund.
Pentec.
Pentec. Yeah. My apologies. Thank you for correcting me. Eddie will absolutely kill me for that. But Pentec, SIB, in there. But then very, very quickly, everyone realised this was a proper scale-up. This was not going to be, let's get you profitable, because if we got you profitable, game over. People were coming from outside. They were going to start spending money. And customer acquisition is what it was all about. So we'll talk in a second about the investment. But it's a really interesting point that I've heard, and I don't know whether it's true or not, Lesley, so you can tell me whether it is or not, that certain individuals in the company, were looking at what they thought were cost-effective ways of acquiring customers. So classic things, affiliate deals, let's do that. And it was really interesting to hear you talk about the fact that I don't do risk. What I've heard is that you were the voice that said we should be going right to the consumer, spending money on television, the big scary stuff, because the other stuff actually doesn't really cost much, we can cut a deal either way. Mm-hmm. I've been kind of there on a much smaller scale, and I know they don't really work. Yeah. You're right. A, is that true? And B, why did you have the confidence to say, no, we're going to take TV, we're going to ultimately become, as you did last year, the biggest advertiser on American television?
Yeah. So in 2010, we were doing the revenue share deals. We had no money. We were playing it as aggressively as we could, but when you're cash strapped, there's nothing much you can do there. 2011, we raised our Series B, or our first effective round after becoming FanDuel, and that was Piton Capital down in London. And at that point, I said, you know what? Why don't we try radio, sports radio? Every town in America has a sports radio station. It's quite different to the UK. And we tried it, and it worked. And so the next season, we expanded it to getting DJs talking about us, and that worked. And then I said, you know what? TV's next. And everything that we did was very analytical. So Mike was talking earlier about cost per acquisition. When we started out, we knew none of this, but we read a lot of books and figured out what a lot of three-letter acronyms stand for, and we figured it out, and we were able to measure response to our advertisements and our advertisements, because we would put an offer in them, and we would, it was classic direct response marketing that we did in the early days. And our first TV campaign was $250,000, and I thought, hold me down, this is so scary. But it was done in a very measured way, and we just figured out what worked, and we did more of it, and that was how we got to the craziness of last year, where our advertising budget was through the roof, and we've now got.
Can you say how through the roof?
It was 9 figures, and we've now got 85% brand awareness throughout the US.
And all those 9 figures weren't zero either, were they?
No.
And so your brand awareness in the US now is?
85%.
85 from zero. Now, this kind of brings me right round to this kind of interesting existential point of, we kind of know why, because we've heard the story, but it seems insane to, especially to Americans, and all my American friends know FanDuel inside out. Every time I tell them it's an Edinburgh-based company, they're like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Now, I think that's brilliant, because it is an American brand and you want them to feel that way, and clearly you've got quite a lot of operation. But you have decided, you, Nigel, the team, this is a Scottish company and we're going to do it. And it's working.
Yeah.
Do you think that's bloody mindedness, or does it actually make sense?
It was a strategic decision to open an office in New York. 2011, we opened an office in New York. What we found was that investors in America did not want to invest in a startup that was based in the UK. So one of our founders moved to New York and set the office up over there. And our staff's pretty much split 50-50 between the US and the UK now. But we'd already built an engineering base up here. The talent in Edinburgh and Scotland has been fantastic. And the competition for talent as well here was at the time a lot less. So we kind of looked at each other and said, well, why would we pick all this up and move to the States? And it's worked for us. And I always laugh, because in the early days we used to hide the fact that we were in Scotland and play the game. But now everybody wants to come to Scotland and play golf and take us to Gleneagles, and like, okay, that's cool.
So So I know we're rapidly kind of running out of time. I want to save some time for questions, but the big thing I'd like to speak to you about for a few minutes is the events of, I want to say, the past 6 to 9 months, where inevitably you create an industry, you create a multi-billion-dollar industry. The regulatory authorities, the politicians, everyone's suddenly going to start to take notice. So first we heard about it, I suppose, was you abandoned New York as a sport, not just FanDuel, but the industry. Same up in, I think, Massachusetts, and then it unfolded from there. I've always had a personal view that there was an inevitability about this. This was just a maturation of a sector. It's classic American things. The lawyers all come out. You're a big grown-up business with massive grown-up investors. It'll all get sorted out. But there's got to be squeaky bum moments along the way. Where are we today?
If you'd asked me in November, that was definitely a squeaky bum moment. That was when the New York AG came out, all guns blazing for us. And that was a pretty scary moment. But what we've seen since November really was other AGs. We've had a lot of positive opinions from AGs.
Attorney Generals.
Attorney Generals, yeah, sorry. And a lot of them have come out and said, I'm not even going to give an opinion on this. It's fantasy sports,
Don't care.
Don't care. Others like Nevada said, get out. We're like, oh, okay, no surprise, we'll get out, that's fine. But since that point in November and December, what we've seen is that most of the states want to work with us and get to a place where we have regulation in place. They want to get some sort of consumer protection put in place to make sure that people are over 18 if they're playing. We tick the box, but now, what we want to get to is we will actually check, we'll go off and check their records. And so we're seeing a lot of massively positive traction. So a couple of months ago, we passed through the House in California, 6 to 8 votes to 1. So not only are we changing the law, I just came back from Virginia last week where we changed the law in Virginia. We got the governor to do the official sign-in. Tuesday, I call Tuesday just passed, Super Tuesday. We passed new laws in Mississippi and Tennessee. We've already passed in Kansas, Indiana, Illinois is looking good. So, it's just a process that we got to work through. And over the next year and a half, it's going to be tough and laborious. And, the legal department can take some of the flack for a change instead of the acquisition department. But, that's just what we've got to get through.
Brilliant.
And we will come out the other end and we're going to be in a fantastic place.
That's phenomenal. Some of the things you're talking about, well, we don't really displace anything. I've got a wee bit of a theory. I can see, and I've seen anecdotal stories, as you probably know more, but in many ways it's a skill, it's a skill product. I like looking at companies, and so in America, people love, far more here, they day trade stocks.
Yes.
I've seen momentum from people stopping day trading
and
actually spending far more time and money on FanDuel. So you've got mega professional players who put 7 figures on fantasy sports, don't you?
Yeah, people say, is it really a game of skill? And I say, well, you try it, because it's fun, but if you want to get really, really good at it, you think about all the different variables. You've got to look at every player on the field, what they're going to be doing that day, how they're going to play. If it's baseball, what's this matchup? And, it's definitely a skilled game. And I always laugh, and people say, is it gambling? Is it a game of skill? I'm like, well, do you know what? Haggis is illegal in America. So give me a break.
As is Adam Blue. So, short amount of time for questions. David, back over to you.
Got a question right down the front here. We're going to take a couple of questions. Forgot my call bell button. We'll take a couple of questions from the floor, and then we'll get into the refreshment break, and you can speak to Lesley, hopefully, in there if you want to. Again, if you just give us your name and your company.
Yeah, hi, Scott McRae from McRae & Co. There must be massive markets elsewhere that are playing, fantasy sports and, Asia Pacific, and, what do you think about those, and what are your plans for those?
Well, interestingly that you mentioned it, we're launching in the UK this year. The UK is obviously a very different marketplace to the US, and it will be our first foray into the international market. And really it will be a sort of proof point as to whether we can make this work outside the US. We believe that we can, but time will tell. Beyond that, yes, there are places like Australia would be an obvious one. Some places in Italy, some places in Europe like Italy. Asia's a pretty specialised place, shall we say, with regards to gaming, and I don't think we're quite ready to make that jump yet.
Okay. Last
Great.
question, David.
Thank you. I've got one over here. You may now ask your question.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Holden. I'm with Developing Nation. I get two questions. First is Louisiana. Is Louisiana, it's kind of like the Vegas of the South. Did they have the same reaction to you? I don't know if you've approached them as Vegas.
So from the very beginning, there were 5 states that we weren't operating in, and we've never operated in. Louisiana was one of them.
Okay.
So.
And the second question is, knowing what you know now, would you have done anything differently?
Yeah, a lot of things.
Because you're quite successful now.
So, Lesley, I mean, it really is. I mean, I talk quite a lot about the fact this is a real golden period for the Scottish technology sector. We're seeing businesses like yours have access to capital that nobody thought was possible from Scotland. Not only have you invented an industry, you're really also pioneering methods for scaling up businesses from here, and belief. Many of the things that you've done have made people absolutely see and believe that they can grow global businesses from Scotland. In probably a way that's not been seen since the 19th century, in my view. You made a great comment, and both Jim and Bob laughed there, which I thought was absolutely sums your business philosophy up. He said, yeah, we're in the UK this week. It's about time we opened an international market. So on that note, Lesley, we wish you and the whole FanDuel team amazing success, and thank you so much for coming.